Before we begin, I just want to say that this video discusses a real series of crimes involving murder and violence. My intention is never to glorify those responsible, but to share the facts of the case with care, respect, and awareness. Out of respect for the victims and their families, some details may be limited, and I encourage you to remember that real people were affected by these events. The Zodiac Killer case remains one of the most infamous unsolved cases in history, and many questions still remain unanswered today. If this case feels like it may be too much for you, please feel free to click away and take care of yourself first. For those of you still here, thank you for being here. And with that said, let's begin. He didn't just kill, he wanted the world to know about it. Letters began arriving at newspapers, cryptic messages, strange symbols, and chilling threats. The writer claimed responsibility for a series of murders. He called himself the Zodiac. Police searched for answers. Detectives followed countless leads. But despite decades of investigation, the person behind the name was never officially identified. And even today, the mystery remains. Before we continue, there's one thing that makes this case different from many others I've covered on this channel. Normally, this is where we would look at the person's early life, family, education, and background. But in this case, we can't. Because despite decades of investigations, countless theories, and numerous suspects, the Zodiac Killer has never been officially identified, which means there is no confirmed early life story to tell. Instead, we have to start where the mystery itself began. The Zodiac Killer claimed to have killed 37 people. However, law enforcement has only officially linked him to 5 murders and 2 attempted murders. The confirmed victims included 3 young couples and 1 individual, with 2 survivors who would later provide investigators with crucial information about the attacks. The crimes took place between December 1968 and October 1969, primarily in the San Francisco Bay Area, spreading fear throughout the community and creating one of the most infamous unsolved cases in history. And before we explore the letters, ciphers, and the mystery of who the Zodiac Killer may have been, let's first talk about the victims we know were murdered by the Zodiac Killer. The first official victims of the Zodiac Killer: 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen and 17-year-old David Faraday were attacked on the cold night of December 20th, 1968. The couple were on their first date when they were senselessly murdered. Both of the victims lived in the small town of Benicia in Southern California. Betty Lou Jensen was a native of Colorado. She was a junior at Hogan High School and an honor student. She was a Grand Royal Bride of the Primavera Council, number 132, Pythian Sunshine Girls, which according to their website, the purpose of the Sunshine Girls is to lay a foundation of purity, service, and usefulness in all things that help to make the lives of those around us happier and the world a better place to live in. She was also a member of the Christian Science Church. David Faraday was a native of San Rafael, California, and a senior at Vallejo High School. He was active in school government, and he was on the wrestling team. He was an Eagle Scout and member of Explorer Post number 209. He had recently won the God and Country Award, which is the highest honor in scouting. He was Lodge Chief of the Order of the Arrow in Solano Napa and Lake County. He was a member of the Knights of Dunamis, which was an organization for Eagle Scouts that was devoted to service. He was also a member of the staff of the Silverado Area Council, another scouting group, and he was an active member of the Presbyterian Church. He had 2 brothers and a sister. Betty and David had met a week earlier at a church function where they were both on a committee to decorate the hall at the Pythian Castle for a music festival. Apparently it was love at first sight, so much so that David started cutting classes to spend time with her, and every day after school he would drive her home. Betty Lou had never dated, and upon the advice of her sister, she invited David to her home to meet her parents. David arrived at her home at 8 p.m., and after being introduced to her parents, they left the house to attend a festival at Hogan High School, 3 blocks from her home, and then to a house party afterwards. They were to be back home by 11 o'clock. They apparently had other ideas for the evening. Her parents found out later that there was no festival at Hogan School, and they didn't show up at any of the known parties happening that night. Instead, the couple went to see her best friend, Sharon. They got there around 8:30 p.m. and talked about possibly going to San Francisco. They left Sharon's house at 9 p.m., but didn't tell her what their plans were. At approximately 11:20 p.m., they were found by a passerby, both shot multiple times. 22 years old Darlene Elizabeth Farron and 19 years old Michael Renaud Majot were the second known victims of the infamous Zodiac Killer in a shooting at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California on July 4, 1969. At approximately 12 a.m., the couple parked at the park when another vehicle pulled up beside them, left, and then returned minutes later. The driver stepped out, flashed a blinding light into their faces, and fired 5 rounds into the car. Darlene was killed, and Michael survived the attack despite severe gunshot wounds. The assailant initially walked away but returned to shoot both victims 2 more times after hearing Michael cry out. Michael survived and provided Vallejo police with a physical description of the killer. This attack, along with a phone call made to the police department shortly after the shooting claiming responsibility, is historically recognized as the Zodiac's second confirmed strike. 22-year-old Cecilia Ann Shepard and 20-year-old Brian Calvin Hartnell were the victims of the notorious Zodiac Killer in a brutal attack at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California on September the 27th, 1969. Cecilia was a student at Pacific Union College. Despite her severe injuries, she remained conscious long enough to give authorities a description of the attacker before dying 2 days later, on September 29th, 1969. Brian, also a student at Pacific Union College, Brian survived the attack by playing dead. He was able to give police a detailed account of the events and a physical description of the killer. He later became a lawyer, operating a private practice in Southern California. The attacker approached the couple while they were picnicking, wearing a black executioner-style hood with a white crosshair symbol, the Zodiac insignia on the chest, and a clip on sunglasses attachment, bound them, and stabbed both victims. Claiming to be an escaped convict from Deer Lodge, Montana, he used pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline to bind their hands. The attacker walked to Byron's white Volkswagen Carmen Ghia and wrote a message in black felt-tip pen on the car door, detailing his previous attacks and signing it with his crossed circle symbol. He then called the Napa police from a payphone to report his crime. On the 11th of October at approximately 9:40 p.m. in downtown San Francisco, the Zodiac hailed a cab which was driven by a doctoral student named Paul Stein. The killer gave a destination in Presidio Heights. When the taxi arrived at Washington and Maple Streets, the killer asked to be driven another block. At Washington and Cherry at approximately 9:55 p.m., the Zodiac shot Stein in the head with a handgun and took his wallet and car keys. Unlike the previous attacks, this time the Zodiac Killer wasn't completely alone. 3 teenagers in a nearby house witnessed the attack on Paul Stein and quickly alerted the police. For the first time, investigators had eyewitnesses who had seen the killer. The teenagers watched as the Zodiac wiped down the vehicle and rifled through Paul's clothes. He left behind 2 partial fingerprints from his right hand. While the Zodiac was tending to the cab, the kids called the San Francisco Police Department. They described the criminal as a husky white man in a dark or black jacket. The dispatcher mistakenly alerted SFPD that the suspect was black. Just 2 minutes after the call to police, 2 nearby patrol officers responded to the radio dispatch. They encountered a white man in dark clothes walking north towards the Presidio Army base. They pulled alongside the man and asked if he had seen anything suspicious. The man confirmed he had seen someone waving a gun, and heading east, the officers hurried away. The Zodiac later claimed he was the witness that spoke to the 2 officers. When police arrived at the scene, Paul was declared dead. Police canvassed the area, including the Presidio. The Zodiac had probably fled the area in a car by then. Police assumed the murder was a result of the robbery. However, the Zodiac mailed a bloody piece of Paul Stein's shirt to the San Francisco Chronicle on October 13th. He enclosed it in a letter where he boasted about the murder and claimed to have clandestinely watched police search for him. The Zodiac also threatened to shoot a tire on a school bus and kill children as they exited. The teenage witnesses helped a police artist make a composite sketch of the man they saw at Paul's cab. The two patrol officers who questioned the witness near the scene realized it may have been the Zodiac. They also helped develop a sketch of the suspect. Detectives Bill Armstrong and Dave Toschi were assigned to the case. Dave ended up working on the case by himself and filled 8 filing cabinets with potential suspects. In 1976, he told the Associated Press that Zodiac's letters were an ego game. He believed the killer lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's a weekend killer. Why can't he get away Monday through Thursday? Does his job keep him close to home? I would speculate he maybe has a menial job, is well thought of, and blends into the crowd. I think he's quite intelligent and better educated than someone who misspells words as frequently as he does in his letters. After working on the Zodiac case for 7 years, Dave started writing anonymous letters praising his own investigative work to Chronicle columnist Armistead Maupin. 2 years later, in 1978, Dave was removed from the case and demoted to pawn shop detail. He expressed regret for the hoax. That same year, Armistead also received a purported Zodiac letter. Police investigated whether Toschi wrote it as well and concluded he did not. In 2009, The Guardian reported that the police had investigated an estimated 2,500 Zodiac suspects, and only a half dozen of them were seen as credible by the department. Richard Grinnell, who runs the website Zodiac Ciphers, stated in 2022 that there are probably 50 or 100 suspects named every year. The only man ever named by the police as a suspect is Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender who died in 1992. Arthur denied being the Zodiac. He was interviewed by police from the early days of the investigation and was subject to several related search warrants over a 20-year period. In 2007, Robert Graysmith said that several detectives described Arthur as the most likely suspect. In 2010, Dave Toschi stated that all the evidence against Arthur ultimately turned out to be negative. On the 1st of August, 1973, a letter was mailed to the Albany Times-Union in New York. The returned address was a zodiac symbol. The writer promised to kill again on the 10th of August. A 3-line code in the letter was supposed to reveal the name and location of the victim. However, no murder matched the details in the letter, and the handwriting was not a definitive match for Zodiacs. On the 14th of February, 1974, the Chronicle received a letter explaining that the Symbionese Liberation Army's initials spelled out an Old Norse word meaning kill. The SLA had recently kidnapped newspaper heiress Patricia Hearst. The handwriting was not authenticated as the Zodiac's. On the 8th of May, 1974, the Chronicle received another letter, opining that Badlands was murder glorification, and asked the paper to remove its advertisements. Signed by a citizen, the handwriting, tone, and sarcasm were similar to Zodiac's letters. On the 8th of July, 1974, the Chronicle received an anonymous letter complaining about anti-feminist columnist Marco Spinelli. The letter was signed, "The Red Phantom," red with rage. On the 6th of May, 1986, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle with the author claiming to have killed 100-plus people across California and Nevada. On the 27th of October, 1987, the Vallejo Times-Herald received a correspondence with the author saying, "They will be out driving around on Halloween in my death machine, looking for some kitties to run over." The authorship of these 2 letters is debated. In 2007, an American Greetings Christmas card was discovered in the Chronicle's photo file. Its postmark was from 1990 in Eureka. The card was handed over to the Vallejo police. A photocopy of 2 United States Post Office keys on a magnet keychain was enclosed. The handwriting on the envelope resembled Zodiac's, however, a forensic document examiner deemed it authentic. The discovery electrified Zodiac researchers. It suggested the killing spree may not have been stopped by death or imprisonment, and that the Zodiac might be alive. Despite witness statements, sketches, fingerprints, and countless investigations, the Zodiac Killer was never officially identified. Over the years, police investigated multiple suspects, followed thousands of leads, and examined letters, ciphers, and forensic evidence. But several factors made the case incredibly difficult to solve. Some evidence was limited by the technology available at the time, while other information was inconsistent or incomplete. There were also mistakes during the investigation, including communication errors that may have allowed the killer to escape during the Paul Stein case. As decades passed, evidence became harder to verify, witnesses aged, and many questions remained unanswered. And despite endless theories and suspects, no one has ever been officially confirmed as the Zodiac Killer. Decades have passed, yet the mystery of the Zodiac Killer still remains unsolved. A killer who taunted police, sent cryptic letters to newspapers, and left behind more questions than answers. Over the years, countless suspects have been investigated, theories have emerged, and investigators have continued searching for the truth. But even today, no one has ever been officially confirmed as the Zodiac Killer, and perhaps that's what makes this case so unsettling. The idea that one of the most infamous killers in history may never truly be identified. Thank you for watching Into the Night Stories, and as always, stay safe out there.